I want you to close your eyes for a second. Picture the scene. It's 1928. You are a Syrian plowman. You're working a field on the Mediterranean coast, just north of Latakia. It's hot, the sun is beating down on your neck, and you're just trying to get through the day. And then, clunk.
The sound that changed history.
Right. Your plow hits something hard. You assume it's just a rock, maybe a gnarly old root. You start digging around it, annoyed that you have to stop working. But when you clear the dirt away, you realize it's not a rock. It's a stone slab. And underneath it, a staircase leading down into the dark.
It sounds like the cold open of a mystery novel, doesn't it? But this actually happened. And that clunk didn't just reveal a tomb. It cracked open a time capsule that had been sealed for over 3,000 years. That plowman had accidentally discovered the necropolis of Ugarit, also known as Ras Shamra.
And we aren't just talking about some dusty old pots and pans here. This discovery completely rewired how we understand the ancient world, didn't it?
Oh, rewired is putting it mildly. It was a seismic shock. Before 1928, if you wanted to know about the Canaanites, the people who lived in that region, before and during the time of ancient Israel, you really only had one source.
The Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament.
Exactly. And think about how the Bible depicts the Canaanites. They were the villains.
Always. They're the idolaters, the bad guys.
The enemies, the other. History is written by the victors, and for thousands of years, the Canaanites were effectively voiceless. We only saw them through the hostile lens of the people who, frankly, hated them and everything they stood for.
So finding Ugarit was like finding the diary of the bad guy and realizing they had their own story, their own fears, and their own reasons for doing what they did.
Precisely. Because in the ruins of Ugarit, archaeologists found a library. Thousands of clay tablets written in a unique script, an alphabetic C form that no one had ever seen before.
A whole new language.
A whole new alphabet, really. And once scholars cracked the code, the Canaanites suddenly started speaking for themselves. We weren't reading about them anymore. We were reading them. Their internal theology, their poetry, their desperate prayers for rain.
And that is what we are deep diving into today. This is the latest installment in our mythology series, and we are tackling the Canaanite cosmos. But looking at the source material you sent over, this doesn't feel like the calm, meditative spirituality some people might expect. This feels intense.
It is incredibly intense. It's a mythology defined by violence, by sex, and by a constant, terrifying anxiety about the weather.
I wrote Sky Wars in the margins of my notes.
That is the perfect title, because that's what it is. It's a war in the heavens that has life or death consequences on the ground.
So let's set the stage. To understand these stories, we have to understand the place. Ugarit. What was it? Was it just some backwater farming village?
Oh, no, not at all. In the late Bronze Age, so think around 1400 to 1200 BC, Ugarit was a powerhouse, a real cosmopolitan nexus.
What do you mean by nexus?
I mean, picture a bustling port city that connected the Hittite Empire in the north, the superpowers of Mesopotamia in the east, and the might of Egypt in the south. It was a major hub.
So it's a crossroads.
It's a melting pot. You had ships coming in from Crete, from Cyprus. You had caravans coming from Babylon. It was sophisticated, multilingual, multi-ethnic. And the literature reflects that. The texts we're discussing today, specifically the Baal cycle, are masterpieces of epic poetry. They rival the Iliad or the Odyssey, but they're much older.
But despite all this wealth and trade and sophistication, you mentioned anxiety. Why were they so anxious?
Geography is destiny. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
If you look at the other great civilizations of the time, Egypt or Mesopotamia, they are river civilizations.
Right, the Nile, the Tigris, and Euphrates.
And those are massive, reliable water sources. The Nile floods every year like clockwork. It brings order. It brings stability.
You can set your calendar by it.
Exactly. But the Levant, the coast where Ugarit and Canaan sat, has no giant river. Their entire existence depended on the winter rains. And if you know anything about the Mediterranean climate, you know those rains are capricious.
They're unpredictable. One year it's a flood, the next it's a drought.
They are violent, erratic, and sometimes they simply don't show up.
And if the rain doesn't show up?
You starve. The crops fail. The economy collapses. People die. So the Canaanite religion wasn't just abstract philosophy. It was a theology of anxiety. Their gods weren't just characters in a book. They were the existential explanations for why the rain fell or why the sun was scorching the earth to ash.
That raises the stakes significantly. We aren't just talking about who is the coolest god. We're talking about survival.
We are. It's a survival story against the chaotic sea and the burning sun every single year.
Okay, so let's get into the origin of this worldview. Every mythology has a creation story. How did the Canaanites think the universe began? Was it a Big Bang situation? God speaks and the world appears.
Not in the way we think of it today. In the modern West, we're heavily influenced by later theology, so we tend to think of creatio ex nihilo,
Creation out of nothing.
creation out of nothing. But for the Canaanites, and really the whole ancient Near East, that wasn't the concept. Creation was cosmogonic. It was about bringing order to pre-existing chaos.
So the stuff of the universe was already there, it was just a mess.
Right. Think of it less like a painter with a blank canvas and more like someone with a chaotic, messy room who has to clean it up and organize it. The universe was a chaotic, watery mess. Creation is the act of organizing that mess into a functioning system.
And who's the organizer? Who's the one rolling up their sleeves?
The entity responsible for that organization, the patriarch of this whole system, is El.
El, just eel.
Just El. The word literally means God. He's the creator of creatures, or in the Ugaritic text, Bianema, he is the father of mankind, Ab-Em.
Now I'm looking at the description of El in the sources, and he doesn't seem like the action hero type. He's not throwing lightning bolts.
He isn't at all. He's the grandfather figure, the chairman of the board. The iconography usually shows him as elderly, with a long white beard seated on a throne. He projects stability, wisdom, authority. He doesn't go out and fight in the mud.
So he's not a warrior.
No, he's the executive. He rules. No temple can be built. No king can be appointed without his say-so. But he's static. He holds the authority, but the action happens a level below him.
The text calls him Bull El. That sounds pretty powerful, though.
It does. Bull El signifies virility and strength, but it's distinct from the young warrior strength. It's the strength of the patriarch who has fathered the entire pantheon. He's the ultimate authority, the source of it all. Another one of his titles is LTPN Ildepid, which means something like compassionate God of mercy.
So he's both a powerful bull and a compassionate father. There's a bit of a tension there.
A huge tension. He's remote, but also merciful. He's powerful, but also, as we'll see, sometimes indecisive or even weak in the face of his children's squabbles.
Where does a guy like this live? Because the description of his home is evocative.
It's one of the most beautiful images in the texts. El dwells at the source of the two rivers, in the midst of the streams of the two deeps.
That sounds incredibly specific. The two rivers, the two deeps. What does that mean?
It's the axis mundi, the center of the world, the cosmic mountain. It's the place where the celestial waters, the rain from the heavens, meet the terrestrial waters, the springs and oceans that well up from the earth.
It's the cosmic intersection.
Exactly. And scholars actually think this corresponds to a real place.
Really, you can put a pin in the map for where the creator god lives.
You can make a very educated guess. Most scholars point to Afka in modern-day Lebanon. It's the source of the Adonis River. There's this massive limestone cave there, and during the wet season, after the snows melt, water just explodes out of the rock.
I can picture that.
If you stand there, it looks like the earth itself is birthing a river. It's easy to see why they thought the creator, the source of all things, would live at a place like that.
I love that. It anchors the myth in the actual landscape they walked on. So Ella is the CEO at the source of the rivers. But he's not running this corporation alone. There's a whole divine hierarchy.
Oh, yes. The Canaanite pantheon, which they call the Persilm, or the Assembly of the Gods, is a complex bureaucracy. We can break it down into 4 tiers, and it really mirrors how their human city-states were run, with the king, his family, his executive officers, and so on.
Okay, let's unpack the org chart. Tier 1 is El, who is with him at the top, his consort.
El shares the top tier with Ashra. She is the great mother, the progenitress of the gods. The texts say she gave birth to the 70 sons of Ashra.
70 sons. That is a lot of labor.
A full house, to be sure. But her role is absolutely crucial. She is the diplomat. In the stories we're going to discuss, whenever the younger, more ambitious gods want something from El, they don't go to him directly.
They go to mom.
They go to mom. She's the intercessor. She negotiates. She softens him up, pleads their case. She's the only one who can really manage him.
The power behind the throne.
In many ways, yes. So that's tier 1, the imperial couple. Then we have tier 2, the cosmic executives.
The executives, I like that.
These are the great gods who actually run the daily operations of the universe. This is where the action is. This is Baal, the storm king. This is Anat, the warrior goddess. This is Yam, the prince of the sea. And this is Mot, the god of death.
So El sets the policy, but these guys are the ones in the field implementing it, or in this case, fighting over it.
Precisely. They're the ones whose actions directly impact the human world. Then Tier 3 is fascinating, the craftsman. And the key figure here is Kothar Wahasis.
What a name.
It translates to skillful and wise. He's the divine architect, the blacksmith, the engineer of the gods. He builds palaces, he forges magical weapons. He represents technology and civilization.
So he's like the Hephaestus of this pantheon.
A very good parallel. But here's where it gets really interesting regarding their view of the world. Kothar Wahasis doesn't live in Canaan.
He doesn't. Where does he live?
No. The texts say his throne is in Captor, which is Crete, or sometimes in Memphis, Egypt.
So the god of technology is a foreigner.
He's an expat. He's an international specialist. Now think about what that admits about their society. The Canaanites were traders. They knew that the best metalwork came from the Aegean, that the best luxury goods and architecture came from Egypt.
So they just baked that into their theology.
They did. Logically, the god of craftsmanship must be an international figure. It's a surprisingly humble and realistic worldview.
That is surprisingly humble. It's like admitting, hey, we're good at farming, but if you want high tech, you got to import it.
It's a very practical theology. And finally, that brings us to Tier 4, the messengers. The lowest on the totem pole, gods like Gupan and Ugur.
Gup and Ugur.
Their names literally mean vine and field. They are the runners. They carry the messages between the realms, from El's Mountain to the underworld and back again. They don't have much individual agency, but the entire system collapses without them. Communication is key.
So we've got the board of directors with El and Asherah, the C-suite with Baal and Mot, the head of R&D in Kothar, and the interns, the messengers.
That is the Canaanite cosmos in a nutshell. A divine corporation.
Let's zoom in on that C-suite because that is clearly where the drama happens. The central figure of these texts is Baal. Who is he, really?
Baal is the hero, the protagonist. His name just means lord or master, but his full title is Baal Hadad. He is the storm god. He is the rider of the clouds.
Rider of the clouds. That sounds like a heavy metal album title. It's so evocative.
It's a power move.
Oh.
It declares his domain. He dwells on Mount Zaphon, which is a real mountain on the Syrian-Turkish border, known today as Jebel Akra.
Wait, that's a real place. You can go there.
You can. It rises almost 6,000 feet straight out of the sea. It's a dramatic, imposing peak, and it's almost always shrouded in clouds and storms.
The perfect headquarters for a storm god.
Exactly. For the people of Ugarit looking north from their city, Mount Zaphon was the literal home of the divine. Baal is the storm. When you hear thunder, that is Baal's voice. When you see lightning, that is his lance. He brings the rain. He's the active force of life and fertility in the world.
But he's not the only heavy hitter. We have to talk about his sister Anat. Reading these sources, honestly, she scares me.
Anat is complicated.
Yeah.
She is a goddess of paradoxes. She is called Belt the Virgin, implying a young unmarried status, yet she is also highly sexualized and is Baal's closest partner. She is a creator and a life giver, but she is the most violent figure in the entire pantheon.
Okay, violent how? Give me the specifics.
Well, there's a famous passage in the texts, often called the bloodbath of Anat.
Bloodbath. Okay, I'm ready.
It describes her fighting two armies in a valley, and it doesn't just say she won, it gets visceral. It says she attaches severed heads to her back and chopped off hands to her belt like trophies.
Graphic.
It gets worse. It says she is wading knee-deep in the blood of soldiers, thigh-deep in the gore of warriors.
And isn't she enjoying it?
Yes, that's the most chilling part. The text says her liver swells with laughter and her heart is filled with joy. She is reveling in the carnage.
That is genuinely disturbing. Why would they worship someone who does that? What's the theological point of that?
It's a great question. But look at what happens next. After the slaughter, she purifies herself. She washes in heavenly dew and anoints herself. It links the violence to purification and the restoration of order.
How so?
You have to remember, nature isn't nice. A storm destroys things before it nourishes the fields. A harvest requires cutting down the wheat with a sharp sickle. Angarist embodies that ruthless, violent energy that is sometimes required to protect and sustain life. She's fiercely loyal to Bel and to the cause of life.
So she's the mama bear archetype, but dialed up to 11 and covered in blood.
That is a perfect way to put it. She is the terrifying protector.
Okay, so we've met the cast. We have the wise old father El, the ambitious storm god Bel, the terrifying warrior sister Anist. Now let's get into the story. The outline calls this the Baal cycle. What is that?
This is the magnum opus of the Ugaritic library. It's a long, epic poem, a cycle of 3 major movements that explains how the world works. It's their grand narrative. And it starts with a crisis.
But the chaos camp. I love that word.
The war against chaos. It's a classic mythological trope, but the Canaanites do it in a really unique way.
So what's the conflict? Who's the chaos monster?
The conflict is about who gets to be king of the gods. And surprisingly, El the Wise Father doesn't pick Baal, the hero. He picks Yam.
Yam. That translates to sea, right?
Yes, Yam is Prince Sea, or Judge River. He represents the chaotic, untamed, destructive power of water, the ocean that smashes ships, the floods that wipe out villages. He's chaos incarnate.
Why on earth would El put the chaos monster in charge? That seems like a terrible management decision.
It's the great mystery of the text. Perhaps El represents the old primordial status quo, and the sea is the ultimate primordial force. Maybe he thinks chaos is easier to appease than to fight. But whatever the reason, Yam turns out to be a tyrant. He demands heavy tribute. He oppresses the other gods.
So what happens? Do they form a rebellion?
Not at first. Yam sends his messengers to the divine council, where all the gods are assembled. And this scene is cinematic. The messengers walk in, not bowing, eyes flashing like fire, and the gods are cowards.
They are the great gods.
The text says the gods lower their heads on top of their knees, they curl into balls, they put their faces in their laps, they are terrified. And El, the great patriarch, El capitulates immediately.
He just gives in.
Without a fight. He tells the messengers, Baal is thy slave, O Yam.
Whoa! He throws his own son under the bus, the future hero of the story.
He sells him out completely. Take him. He's your property. Just leave the rest of us alone. It shows this incredible tension between the old generation that wants to appease chaos and the young generation that wants to fight it. Because Baal, of course, refuses to bow.
He stands up.
He stands up. He's furious. He grabs a knife, ready to kill the messengers, but he's held back. He declares he will not be a slave. But you can't fight the ocean with your bare hands. This is where our tech guy, Kothar Wahasis, steps in.
The divine craftsman.
He comes to Baal and says, I will make you weapons. I will forge 2 clubs for you that will guarantee victory.
The magic club.
Yes, and they are so important they have names. He fashions 2 supernatural maces. The first one is called Yagrush, which means chaser or driver, as in it will chase Yam away. So Baal takes it, he swings it, and he hurls it. It flies from his hand like a guided missile and hits Yam on the shoulder.
Does Yam go down?
He stumbles, but he doesn't fall. He's the sea. He's immense and hard to hurt. He's wounded but still standing. So Kothar hands Baal the second weapon, Ayamur.
Expeller.
Expeller.
Yeah.
As in, it will expel him from power. Baal throws this one and it strikes Yam right between the eyes. And the text says Yam collapses and falls to the earth.
Victory.
A decisive victory. And then there's a fascinating line. It says Baal drinks the sea.
He drinks it, the whole ocean.
It's symbolic language. By drinking or scattering Yam, Baal is containing the chaotic waters. He's taking that destructive power, the floods, the tsunamis, and domesticating it. He turns the floodwaters into productive rain. He makes water useful for agriculture instead of a force of destruction.
So he saves the universe from being drowned in chaos. He establishes the first level of order.
He does. He is now the champion, the king. But there's a problem.
There's always a problem, isn't there?
Baal is king, but he is homeless.
Homeless? What do you mean?
In the ancient Near East, if you don't have a palace, you aren't a real king. You're just a warlord with a big stick. To have a real administration, to rule properly, you need a house, a palace.
So this leads to the second part of the cycle, the palace building project.
Right. And this might seem bureaucratic and a little boring after the big fight, but it's absolutely crucial to their worldview. Baal is basically living in El and Asher's basement on their mountain. He needs his own HQ on his mountain, Mount Zaphon.
But he needs a building permit from the top guy, from El.
And El is the one who sold him out to the sea earlier, so it's an awkward conversation.
I'll bet. So who does Baal send to negotiate?
He sends Anat. And Anat, she doesn't ask nicely.
Knowing her, I assume threats are involved.
Oh, yes. She marches up to El's throne and threatens to make his gray hair run with blood and the gray of his beard with gore if he doesn't sign off on the palace. She threatens to smash his head in.
She threatens her own father, the creator god, with extreme violence.
It shows how desperate the situation is. For the world to function, order must be established, and that requires a palace for the Storm King. But Asherah also steps in with a softer approach.
The diplomat.
Exactly. She uses flattery and bribes lots of silver and gold. And between Anat's violent threats and Asher's diplomacy, El finally relents. He gives his permission.
So Kothar, the architect, comes in and builds this magnificent palace. It's made of cedars from Lebanon, filled with silver and gold. But then there's this weird debate about a window.
This is one of my favorite details in the whole cycle because it seems so mundane, but it's the whole point. Kothar, being a good architect, wants to put a window in the palace, and Baal says absolutely not.
Why? Who hates windows? That's just strange.
Baal is paranoid. He's just defeated Yam. He's a new king, and he's insecure in his power. He's afraid that Yam, even though he's defeated, might slip back in through the window, or that his daughter's personifications of mist, dew, and earth might escape through it. He wants a completely sealed fortress.
So no window. It's a closed system.
For a while. But eventually, once the palace is completely finished and Baal throws a massive feast for all the gods, he feels secure. He's established his kingship. He changes his mind. He tells Kothar, okay, cut the window.
And why does this matter? Why is the installation of a window the climax of this entire section of the story?
Because the palace isn't just a building, it's the cosmos. And the window is the sluice gate of the clouds. The text says that the moment the window is opened, Baal lets out his holy voice, which is thunder, and the earth shakes. He opens the window and roars, and the rains come.
So the window in the palace is the break in the clouds where the rain comes from.
Exactly. The entire myth explains the meteorology. The chaos of the sea is defeated, the palace of the sky is built, the window is opened, the thunder roars, and the life-giving rains come. The world is green, life is good, order is established.
But rain doesn't last forever? The summer comes?
No, it doesn't. The seasons turn, the clouds vanish, the sun gets hotter and more intense. And this brings us to the third and darkest movement of the cycle, the battle against Mot.
Mot. His name literally means death.
Yes. Mot is the god of death, sterility, drought, and the underworld. He lives in a city called Miri. Just imagine a swamp of mud and decay. And his nature is the biological opposite of Baal. Baal is life, rain, fertility. Mot is entropy and decay.
And Mot is hungry. I remember that from the text.
Insatiable. He has a cosmic appetite. He says his throat is one lip to the earth, one to the heavens. He says his appetite is like a lion in the desert, like the craving of the dolphin in the sea. He wants to swallow everything.
So Baal has defeated Chaos-E. Now he has to face entropy and death.
Right. Baal, feeling confident after his victories, sends messengers to Mot, basically saying, hey, I'm the king now. You need to recognize my authority and stay in your lane. And Mot laughs. He sends a message back that basically says, you might have defeated the sea, but I am death. All life comes to me eventually. I'm going to eat you.
So Baal grabs his magic clubs and gets ready for round 2, right? A bigger, badder chaos monster.
That's the twist. He doesn't. Baal surrenders immediately.
Why? After all that, he just gives up.
He sends a message back. I am your slave and yours forever.
That makes no sense. He's the hero of the whole epic.
But think about the reality this myth is describing. Can you stop the summer from coming? Can you fight the drought with a club? Can you prevent the crops from withering in the heat?
No, it's inevitable. The rain has to stop.
The theology has to match the reality. The vegetation must die in the dry season. So Baal, the life force, must surrender to Mot. It's an inevitable part of the cycle.
That is incredibly bleak. What a downer ending.
It gets bleaker. Before he leaves to meet his fate, Baal copulates with a heifer. He's trying to ensure he leaves an heir, a sort of backup plan for life itself. And then he walks down into the underworld and descends into the throat of death. He dies.
And what happens to the world?
The world breaks. The text says the wadis dry up, the heat sets in, the fertility is gone, and the reaction of the gods is one of intense grief. Even El, the stoic father, gets off his throne. He comes down, sits in the dust. He pours ashes on his head, and he takes a stone and cuts his own skin on his face, his arms, his chest.
He lacerates himself.
Yes. It's a sign of extreme ritual mourning. And incidentally, this is almost certainly why the Hebrew Bible later strictly forbids cutting your flesh for the dead in the book of Leviticus. For the Israelites, that was a pagan Canaanite ritual they wanted to distance themselves from.
Yeah.
But for El, it was the ultimate sign of piety and grief. His son, the source of life, was dead.
So Baal is gone. Mot has won. The world is a desert. Is that it? The end?
If it were the end, we wouldn't be here. The world would be a permanent wasteland. This is where Anat, the warrior sister, returns to the stage.
Of course. She's not going to take this lying down.
She doesn't accept the defeat. For a month, she searches for Baal's body. Eventually, she finds it and gives him a proper burial. Then she goes to Mot. She demands her brother back. Mot refuses. He's arrogant. He basically says, I ate him. He's gone. I'm stronger than ever. Deal with it.
Wrong answer to give to Anat.
The very worst answer. What follows is, in my opinion, one of the most profound and brutal passages in ancient literature. And it doesn't just kill Mot, she harvests him.
Harvests him? What does that even mean?
Listen to the verbs the text uses. It's not a description of a fight. It's a description of agricultural processing. It says she seizes him, she cleaves him with a sword blade. She winnows him with a sieve, she burns him with fire, she grinds him with millstones, and finally she sows his remains in the fields.
Those aren't war terms, those are farming terms. Cleaving like with the sickle, winnowing grain, grinding flour.
Exactly. She treats death himself like a stalk of wheat. She processes him.
Wait, hold on. She chops him up, burns him, grinds him into dust, and then sows him. How does that bring life back?
It sounds like a horror movie, but look at the incredible symbolism. The message is that death, sterility, drought, is transmuted into life grain through divine intervention. By destroying Mot as if he were grain and sowing him in the earth, she is forcing the cycle to restart. She turns death into the potential for food.
That is actually kind of beautiful in a very, very gruesome way.
It's the core of their survival, the belief that even death can be made to serve life. And immediately after this, El has a dream. He dreams that the heavens are raining oil and the dry riverbeds, the wadis, are running with honey.
Oil and honey,
Yeah.
the ultimate symbols of abundance.
The best things you can imagine. He wakes up and shouts for joy, Baal is alive! The rider of the clouds lives.
But resurrection.
The resurrection. Baal returns from the underworld. He reclaims his throne. He and Mot have one last epic fight, a real knockdown, drag-out brawl, but neither can win. Finally, the sun goddess Shamash intervenes. She tells Mot, look, El is on Baal's side now. If you keep fighting him, the father of the gods will overturn your throne. So Mot, fearing the ultimate authority, finally surrenders. Order is restored, the rains return.
Until the next year.
Until the next summer. It's a cycle. That's why it's called the Baal cycle. It's the eternal loop of the seasons. The triumph of the autumn rains, the death of the summer drought, and the violent intervention needed to bring the rains back again.
It really emphasizes how different their view of time was. We tend to think of time as a straight line, a linear progression from past to present to future. But for them, time was a circle. You're trapped in the loop.
You are. And that brings us to the legacy of all this. Because when you were hearing these stories, the battle with the sea monster, the divine council, the storm god riding on the clouds, the dying and rising god, I suspect many of our listeners were thinking, wait a minute, I've heard this before.
It sounds remarkably, almost uncomfortably like the Bible.
It does. And this is the great aha moment that came from discovering Ugarit. These texts provided the missing link, the cultural context, for understanding the Old Testament. The Israelites and the Canaanites were neighbors. They lived in the same climate. They spoke dialects of the same language. They shared a cultural matrix.
So let's get specific. Let's look at the parallels. You mentioned the divine council.
Right. Look at Psalm 82 in the Bible. It starts, God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment.
In the midst of the gods. Plural. You don't usually expect that in a monotheistic text.
Exactly. The Hebrew phrase is badakal. In Ugaritic, the assembly of the gods is the tilm. It's a direct linguistic cognate. The biblical writer is using the exact same terminology and conceptual framework as the Canaanites.
But in the Bible, God is usually supreme. He doesn't have a board of directors.
Well, in that psalm, he's actually firing the board of directors. He condemns the other gods for judging unjustly and sentences them to die like mortals. But the structure, the idea that there is a heavenly assembly, is pulled straight from this Canaanite worldview. It's a polemic within that worldview.
Okay, so they share the structure. What about Baal himself? Does Yahweh, the God of Israel, have any beef with Baal?
Oh, a huge amount. The entire story of the prophet Elijah on Mount Carmel is a showdown between Yahweh and Baal. But what's fascinating is how the biblical writers didn't just reject Baal. They appropriated his imagery and his titles.
How so?
They basically said, you think your god Baal is the rider of the clouds? No, Yahweh is the true rider of the clouds.
They stole his title.
They did. Psalm 68 refers to God as the Rukbarish, the rider on the clouds. That is Baal's trademark epithet, Archeo er Ipanande. It's like a Pepsi ad using Coke's slogan to say, we're the real thing. It's theological competition.
It's a polemic, a direct argument.
It is. Take Psalm 29. The whole psalm describes the voice of the Lord thundering over the waters, breaking the cedars of Lebanon, shaking the wilderness. Many scholars believe this was originally a hymn to Baal that was adapted by the Israelites.
They just swapped the names?
They took the hymn, crossed out Baal, and wrote in Yahweh, because Baal is the thunder god. The voice is the thunder. They were making a powerful theological point. Our God, Yahweh, is the one who truly controls the storm. not the god of our neighbors.
And what about the sea monster? The battle against Yam.
This is maybe the clearest parallel of all. In the Baal cycle, Baal fights Yam, the sea, and his monstrous ally, the serpent Lotan. In the Bible, in Isaiah, in Job, in the Psalms, Yahweh does battle with the sea and the monster Leviathan.
Is Loden related to Leviathan? The name sounds similar.
They are linguistically the same word. The Ugaritic texts call Lotan the fleeing serpent, the twisting serpent, the seven-headed one. Now listen to Isaiah 27. In that day, the Lord will punish Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, the twisting serpent.
A word for word.
It's an exact quote. The biblical authors knew these stories inside and out. But here is the crucial difference, the point you touched on earlier, time.
The circle versus the line.
In Ugarit, the battle against the sea is cyclical. It has to happen every year to reestablish order. Nature is a loop. In the Bible, the writers took this myth and made it linear. They historicized it.
What do you mean by that?
Yahweh defeats the sea once at the beginning, in creation. He defeats the Red Sea, a historicized version of the chaos waters at the Exodus, and he will defeat the ultimate serpentine evil in the end times at the final judgment.
So they took a nature cycle and turned it into a historical timeline with a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Exactly. They took the lore of survival and turned it into a lore of salvation. It means history is going somewhere. It has a purpose and a destination, rather than just spinning its wheels forever. That's a profound, world-changing shift in thinking.
That is a profound shift. It really explains why the Bible feels so unique, yet so familiar if you know this context. It's arguing with its neighbors using their own language.
It shows that the Bible wasn't written in a vacuum. It was a countercultural document, engaging with the deepest fears and hopes of its time.
Before we wrap up, I want to ask about the rituals on the ground. We've talked about the high myths, but what were real people doing? You mentioned the cult of the dead in the notes.
Yes, the Rephaim. These were the deified ancestors, the shades of dead kings.
The Rephaim. I've definitely seen that word in the Bible, too. They're usually described as giants or ghosts living in the underworld.
Right, the Bible portrays them negatively as part of the shadowy underworld. But in Ugarit, the Rephaim were the honored dead kings. The living king would hold a ritual feast called a Marzea to connect with them.
Oh, yeah, Marzea. What happened there?
It involved heavy wine consumption, really heavy drinking. The idea was to reach an altered state of consciousness, to summon and commune with the dead ancestors, to feast with them, and to ask for their blessing on the dynasty.
So getting drunk with ghosts to save the kingdom.
Essentially, it was about ensuring dynastic continuity by connecting with the powerful dead. And this explains why the biblical prophets were so vehemently against it. To them, it was necromancy and drunkenness. To the Canaanites, it was piety.
And then there's the dark side of ritual. Human sacrifice. We have to address the elephant in the room. The Bible constantly accuses the Canaanites of sacrificing their children to the god Moloch. Is there truth to that in the Ugaritic texts?
This is a highly debated and very sensitive topic. It's important to be clear. The bull cycle itself only mentions sacrificing animals: bulls, rams, sheep. We do not have a how-to guide for child sacrifice in the Ugaritic library. There's no ritual text that says, here's how you do it.
So is it just anti-Canaanite propaganda from the biblical writers?
Not entirely. We have archaeological evidence from Punic colonies like Carthage, which were founded by Canaanites from Phoenicia, that strongly suggests child sacrifice did happen in certain circumstances. And the texts do hint at the concept of offering what is most precious to avert divine wrath in a time of absolute crisis.
Like an emergency brake for the whole nation.
Exactly. If the city is about to be destroyed, if the enemy is at the gates and you're facing annihilation, the logic is that you must offer the most valuable thing you have to the gods. It wasn't something they did every Tuesday. It was likely a horrific, desperate measure for an extreme national crisis.
Which again ties back to that theology of anxiety. When the stakes are total survival, people do extreme things.
They do. And that's really the core of this entire deep dive. These weren't cartoon villains. They were people living in a terrifyingly fragile environment, using myths and rituals to try and make sense of a world that often seemed like it wanted to kill them.
So when we step back from all this, what's the big takeaway? Why does this matter to us today, sitting in our relatively stable air-conditioned rooms?
I think it offers two incredibly important things. First, it gives us a 3D view of our own history. You cannot fully understand the Western religious tradition, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, without understanding the Canaanite soil it grew out of and in many ways defined itself against.
It's the context that gives the text its meaning. And the second thing,
The archetype. The story of the dying and rising God. the hero who goes into the underworld to defeat death and bring back life.
That sounds very, very familiar.
It echoes through all of human history, from Osiris in Egypt to Baal in Canaan, to the Greek myths of Persephone and Adonis, and eventually finds a new and powerful expression in Christian theology. It is one of the most enduring and powerful stories humanity has ever told.
The hope for life after death.
It speaks to that fundamental hope that no matter how dark the winter gets, no matter how final death seems, spring is coming.
That order will ultimately conquer chaos.
And that after the long, dry summer, the rain will return.
That is a beautiful place to land. It turns these dusty 3,000-year-old tablets into something that feels deeply and immediately human.
Indeed. It's the lore of survival.
Well, I think my view of the bad guys of the ancient world has definitely shifted. There is so much more depth there than you get from a surface reading of other texts.
Always more to learn when you dig beneath the surface.
Literally, in the case of that plowman from 1928.
Indeed.
All right, that brings us to the end of this deep dive into the Canaanite cosmos. I hope you'll never look at a thunderstorm or a window the same way again.
Or a plow, for that matter.
True. If you enjoyed this journey into the lost world of Ygritte, make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. We have another stack of sources already on the desk for our next deep dive, and trust me, it's going to be just as eye-opening.
We're going to be connecting some very interesting dots between different traditions.
You won't want to miss it. Thanks for listening, and stay curious.